a reminder of something that was attributed to Ramana Maharshi when a spiritual seeker came to him when he was in his ashram in India. And for those of you that don't know, Ramana Maharshi is a highly regarded Indian sage from the last century who shared mostly through silence. Silence is the highest form of teaching. We use words as a way to convey silence often, or to convey the depth of what we experience inside. And he, in one of his rarer moments of speaking, referred to spiritual seekers, referred to people who are looking for answers as types of fuel on a fire. And you have those people who are like the tinder that just needs the tiniest spark to light. You have another type of person who is like the coal that requires a bit more energy, but once it's burning, it's there. And then you have a different type of person still who is more like the kind of wet log, if you like. So if you can get it lit at all, it would take a huge amount of effort and doesn't necessarily stay alight. And this question brings that to mind because when the words of others or the actions of others leave an impression on us, it's because at some level there is something inside of us that resonates with that. There is something inside of us that feels some degree of truth in those words. So if you were to look at yourself in the mirror and there's just something in the back of your mind that says, I'm not sure I look very good today. And it just so happens that when you go out into the world, someone looks at you and says, you don't look very nice today. It's going to hurt more because it's something you've inwardly acknowledged or recognized or thought about yourself. Whereas if you weren't to have that thought, if it wasn't even to register, then the words of someone else would have very little impact because there isn't a place for them to land. And as long as there is a place for the unkindness of others to land inside of us, then there is always a possibility that it will. And that's not to say that we should beat ourselves up or we should judge ourselves harshly or unfairly for being, I don't know, less further ahead than we thought we were, because this isn't about being further ahead. Like the measure of progress when we tread the path of self-improvement or spiritual improvement or spiritual development isn't about things that we can tangibly see or do. It's about our ability to remain established in a particular place, let's call it a posture within ourselves. And the highest level of that, as it appears to me, is to remain established in that peaceful state, the equanimity of mind, where it doesn't matter what someone else says or does, you are still free to choose how you feel, to choose your thoughts. And of course, for many people, that's an aspirational state, but it exists. And it may be that there are certain areas of life that we're better at it than others, but it's a possibility nonetheless. And to embrace it as a possibility doesn't mean that where you are today or where you perceive yourself today is a failing. It's just relative to that. And to understand, to acknowledge that how you feel when someone says something particular isn't necessarily the way that you would like to feel, is to bring awareness to something that for a very long time has probably just happened under the surface. And I can't talk about this without taking it slightly wider and considering how many of us perceive the world, perceive the words of others as counter to the truth that we live in. And what I mean by that is, if you perceive the things that you believe about life to be truth and I mean in the absolute sense, then first of all you are denying the possibility of any other truth existing, but also in doing so you're denying the experience that other people are having as a result of holding different perspectives, of having different truths. Now, I've mentioned this to some degree on previous videos, but there is no one truth in form. Like, there is no one thing that we can look at and go, this is the absolute truth, and you are free to disagree with that. But once something is written into form, once something is created in form, it's limited. It's limited because you're taking something which is unbound and infinite, infinitely expansive, and you're trying to limit it and fit it into this tiny framework of words and language, which we so often struggle with to convey the things that we feel inside. And that's why many people resort to art and to other forms of expression, because we recognize at some level that words just cannot convey the essence of something. Some of us are better at it than others. For me, it's a work in progress. So where we experience friction, where there is a lot of friction in the world, is because we have so many people who believe that their worldview is the truth and that everybody else is living in the same worldview, and that somehow they're in denial of that, or somehow their worldview may be different and they are therefore wrong. And rather than taking a moment to consider that that may be a possibility and being curious about how someone may perceive the world differently to us, what tends to happen is we defend our worldview, and then we have this friction, we have this conflict. And this happens in relationships of all kinds, but it happens at the larger level, where two cultures of people, or two schools of thought, or two religions, or two systems of belief will come together in some way and clash with each other, because both hold their perspective as truth. So if you find yourself in a position where someone is saying hurtful things to you, first of all consider, do you, or is there a possibility that you at some level have a thought or a feeling inside which resonates with that? And if you didn't, how differently would you perceive it? And also to consider that that person or group of individuals who are expressing their opinions towards you, although they may feel uncomfortable in that moment, also have a different perspective to you, and that perspective may, to them, be painful. It may be that the world is a harmful place and that conflict is inevitable, and they're going to whatever lengths they're going to try and prevent that. It may be that that's the perception they have of you, that you are in some way a threat or dangerous or different, and that represents their perspective of the opposing other, let's say. And all of us find ourselves in that position from time to time, but it's the degree to which it affects us, the degree to which something inside of us resonates with those things, that continues it. Now eventually what happens as we notice it over and over again, as we notice these things unfolding, is that eventually they lose their grip. The fact that you have articulated it means that it's in awareness. You've shone the light of awareness on it. So its time is limited. How long it will take for you to see that response as a reflex, and for it to stop becoming a reflex and start becoming a choice, I cannot say. but it will happen. So if there is anything that we can do if we're in that situation, if we recognize these feelings arising inside of us, is to continue noticing it. And the power of noticing anything is, it's not spoken about as much as I feel it could be. You know, too often we get lost in the realm of techniques and things we can do to manage the pain or to cope with the feeling of discomfort. And if you want those things, then there are an infinite number of places you can go to find them. But my suggestion is, rather than dealing with the ripples on the surface, which are the feelings, we look underneath that. And what's underneath that is the awareness. It's the ability for us to notice that something is happening, to bring that into awareness increasingly to such a degree that it stops making sense, that we start to perceive the act and the response. And in that space, for those of you that have read Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, in that space, that's where the power is. Between every stimulus and response, there is a choice. That choice arises in awareness. So wherever you happen to find yourself, if you are noticing certain behaviors of others, or you're noticing certain responses in yourself, or you're noticing certain things in the world, rather than try and deal with it at the level of how it's playing out physically, unless you absolutely have to in that moment because there's a threat or there is some kind of situation that you need to avoid, my suggestion is to continue that power of noticing, to continue being aware and observing these things inside of you with curiosity, not with judgment, not to ask yourself inwardly the question, why is this happening to me? Why is this still here? Why are these people being so horrible? But just observing it as you would observe a piece of music from a genre of music that you've never heard before. You're just listening to it without any point of reference. And to listen to something, to observe something, to notice something without a point of reference is to give it space to unfold in its own natural way without trying to force it down a particular channel. And when you can do that, and you start to realize that you can do that in every area of life, then your life becomes increasingly conscious. As I said before, consciousness is choice. Consciousness is the ability to choose where to direct your attention, what to focus on, how you feel about a given situation. It's the capacity to change, and every single one of us is born with that capacity, and we carry it through life, and it does not become diminished by time nor circumstance. So there's a few things in there I would encourage you to reflect on and how it's playing out in your own life. Come back to that power of noticing. See if there is something that you may notice about yourself that you haven't noticed before. Be compassionate. You don't have to judge yourself. None of us have to judge ourselves for responding in a way which in hindsight may not have been constructive, because the next time we'll respond differently. Eventually we'll stop responding at all. And we can learn from these experiences, every single one of us. And let me know what you hear in that. If there is a further question, if I have in some way stimulated a different question or failed to answer the question that you asked in the first place, which I hope I haven't, then let me know, and I'm happy to expand upon that in the best way I can. And similarly, for any of you out there who are watching this that may have a question of your own that relates to this subject or a different subject surrounding the advancing of your own life, becoming more conscious, more aware of who and what you really are beyond this mind, then let me know in the comments. Let me know if you want to contact me through my website. The details are in the description of this video. And if you do find value in the video, then please let me know as well. It helps me tremendously if you interact in some way, whether that's by sharing, commenting, liking, subscribing, all of the things that one typically does on YouTube. And I appreciate every one of your views. So for now, I thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next one.